Matthew's in the room, but Matthew, you're online?
I'm already in.
Oh, well, you don't need to be in there.
Yeah. Sometimes I get a better view of your screen.
All right, let's get this one online. So
I have this. I was.
Pretty sure.
all right, that's good. Over here. Get this one on. Actually, let me boot out of here and go back into Linux. I don't want to update shutdown. I just want to restart. No. Give me a second to bring this computer online. I've been trying to install Ubuntu for Windows 10. So if you went to the Windows Store, there's another option for you. It's only the terminal, it's not the graphical user environment. So it's not quite like using VirtualBox, but you can get a Ubuntu terminal to run in Windows 10 by literally going to the Windows Store, and they have a Ubuntu version. And Ubuntu is
that what it's called, Ubuntu?
Yeah, well, and that's Linux Mint is a form of Ubuntu. Remember, there's all sorts of distributions or distros, and there's a hierarchy, and some came from other things. And right now, I'm in here, log into Zoom.
Yeah, Tom. A friend of mine was able to help me try to get that external hard drive to work with the door.
Yeah.
So anything that you want me to try to do for homework, I could try to do it.
Okay. Cool.
And if you think that it would be a good idea, try sending me some random stuff to do on it, just to see if I can get it to work.
So assuming I'm ahead of myself. But yes, I literally have been closing out my office up in Orono the past few weeks, so I've been right up to here. And I think we're done with that today. And so hopefully that'll free up a little time. I had for the last 4 years, I had an office in downtown Orono, that was where we ran our business out of, with 4 or 5 people working there all the time. All of our equipment, all of our files, all of our computers, and we're moving it back to our home office and getting rid of most of the employees. And it's just a boatload of stuff to move. And so we've been, every spare moment, we go back up, load the van up again. I can start recording. See, now it started recording this time, but it didn't last time. I don't know why, sometimes it does, sometimes. All right, so couple of things. Is anybody, I don't think anybody's actually online except for Matthew, and he's in the room.
Hi.
Are we all here?
Oh yeah, let me do a.
Physically, yes. Mentally,
Up and on.
I'm trying.
Those are good math. I just wanted to,
Oh, we've got somebody joining in.
John.
John Cena. Who's John Cena in this? I know the joke, but still.
All right. If you're in the class, you need to be in the class. So let's focus. What I wanted to talk to you about is, so we've been working with Linux, and you know, there's two parts of it. There's the terminal. Is that fun? And the terminal is where it's like the command prompt in Windows. That's where we interface directly with the computer, type in commands that are at a fairly low level, and it does things that we want it to do. There's also, what do you call the other part of it? No. It's a GUI. It sounds like a hot brownie or something, you know, a GUI. And that's the graphical user interface. Thank you. I was going to say environment, but that would be GUI, you know, with a UE. But and so we're going to spend probably the last 1 or 2 classes just talking about the graphical user environment as if you wanted to use Linux for real, you know, and that was going to be your primary operating system. Same as we do an introduction to Windows operating system or Apple, although you'll probably never catch me doing an Apple one because I haven't used it since 1992. I think it was the last time I used it. We're just losers, you know. Come on. I hate you.
It's right here.
Should be shared. Anyway, so we've got the terminal, and there's a couple of options for doing the terminal. One is we can, you know, do a live boot. I don't know why I'm speaking today, but you do a live boot. That's where you put a thumb drive in. Oh, all right. Well, all right. You can do a live boot, and as who was it that was having an issue with that?
I had the Fedora issue, but I'm okay with it.
Right. So if you do a live boot and you try to do some upgrades, the problem is that you are operating off of a thumb drive, and it doesn't always behave the same as if you have it installed on the computer. In theory, it should, but you'll find instances of where it fails to update, fails to install packages, and things like that. The second option, of course, is that you run it as a you know, the primary operating system. So you've got it installed on a computer, or you could have it as a dual boot. I mean, it still would be the primary operating system, but you get to choose which one that you're going to boot to, whether it's Windows 10 or not. And another option is that you do something like VirtualBox, where you're doing virtualware, virtual machine, and you've got it running on the Windows desktop as its own little box. All of those work, but there's another option too. I'm going to go this way only because I ran out of space. And this one is where you go to the Windows Store. And they actually have Ubuntu. It's only a terminal window. I tried to download and install it today, and I haven't gotten it to work yet, but it should work. And I'll have to go back and see why it was giving me issues. Unfortunately, I still can't do anything on my desktop because it's locked down by the college. So I have to come in here and use one of these to play with, which annoys me, but I get it. So again, for you doing your terminal work where you're trying to do examples of the different stuff that you put in, you can do live boot, actually install it on your computer, run a virtual ware, whether it's, VM, VirtualBox, or any of the ones that are available for that. And then you can go to the Windows Store and try to download Ubuntu right out of the store, and it gives you, basically it's setting up a small virtual terminal on your computer that allows you to run just the terminal, none of the graphical user. All of these let you run the graphical user interface as well, if there is one with the version that you're putting on. This is just the terminal. Questions? Uh-oh, did it freeze? Anybody else?
It's not kicking me off.
Yeah.
You just go home.
The internal optimist we have. Noah, can we go home? All right, so we're back. Sorry, Noah.
I'll keep trying.
I know.
There's gotta be something. You teach me how to crash, like say a school network using Linux? Asking for a friend.
I'll let you go and look online for that. I don't want responsibility. Hey, look, I can zoom in. It's a lot easier to see. I also wanted to pull up a presentation I'm going to walk through.
Brian requested all the swapping pieces. One day Brian's here, then Weston's not, and then Weston's here, and then
with all the speed of nothing. Oh, there we go. Yes, it works. Okay, there we go. Thank you. So I wanted to run through Module 4. So when we started this class, the goal was to make it through probably about 8 modules by the end of the class, 7 or 8 modules. I don't think we're going to, come close to that. A couple of you have done the quizzes all the way through towards the end, which is awesome. A lot of you have done the quizzes up through 4 and 5, or 4 or 5. You need to keep working on those, which means you read the modules, you do the quizzes. Only a few of you have gone beyond the lab assignments in chapter or module 3. So you still need to be working on those. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through a chapter, or I keep calling chapter, but module 4, which had a lot to do with file system management. And Linux is not that dissimilar to the Microsoft operating system. It's not that dissimilar to what they use in Apple. These are the commands upon which the rest of the world is built. And one of the things I always want you to think about, and which I could see myself putting an exam on the final for, is, okay, here's this command in Linux. Where would you see it in a full regular operating system? Not you typing it in, but where would this be seen? Like change directory, where would you see that on a Windows machine?
on Windows?
Well, I know that's operating a different, more on the graphical user environment of Linux. Where would the actual CD command show up.
When you're,
And the winning sign in.
No.
and when you're like clicking through the folders.
Yeah, when you're changing folders in, the file manager. So not, I mean, you would use it in the terminal. What I mean is, okay, where in the non-terminal world do you think this particular program is being called upon? Gosh, list. Where's that being used? In the file manager. Sending email, using the SSMTP protocols, using the URL and web-based protocols. What kind of program will you see those in? Because that's what you're starting to try to learn a little bit about here. All of this stuff ties back into all of those programs. And I, it's just an introductory course. And I know there's a lot of stuff we've been covering, and some of you probably are picking it up a little faster than others. Congratulations to Devin, he was the first one. And I think the only one so far that the email has actually made it through to me. Go Devin.
It said it like aired out.
You can sometimes get emails through that still get an error message. But either way you look at it, I did get one from Devin. So introduction to Linux. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. Sorry, can you read it sort of? You're close to one. So there's the locate command. This is very similar to the find command. And the way you use it is that, you just, it goes out and locates files or folders. The difference is that locate uses something called the database, mlocate database. So every time a user logs on to Linux, Linux creates a table that says where everything is. You can change, yeah, I know it's bouncing me out again. But just stay shared, thank you very much. You can, if you were to go and change files and try to use the locate, so you logged in, you changed some files, added files, deleted files, that mlocate DB database may not have been updated because it updates when you first open up as a new user. So you may find yourself not able to find a file with locate. One of the nice features with locate is you can use the bar and more so that you can display a long list one page at a time. It's like, nope, these are all the places that have it. If I flip back over to the terminal and do well, here I'm going to do a list first, so I need to find something. So if I do locate music, then it finds it in two places. Not very different than find. So it's just one more thing. I don't think there's anything in this computer right now that would cause it to go over one page. So imagine that this was something a little bit larger. Maybe it's an email server, or if I wanted to look at locate. There you go. So that I put in URL. So everything that's got a URL in it, which includes everything that's lib curls and eye curls and all of those which are needed. So I could have done locate that and then use the more command. And so it only does one page, one page, one page. So that's just a nice feature if you're searching for a particular thing.
That was locate dot. Locate dot gives you quite the.
Oh, yes. I would imagine, it's still catching up.
Yeah, we did locate dot.
So that's the locate command. It's powerful, comes in handy. The find command.
So what was the piping you just used on that? So I just did like the locate out, that has piping on it, like you put a line in that,
Yes,
so
it's,
what,
what it does is it separates your search and then an additional parameter that locate understands.
okay.
You know, if we did, oops, I didn't want that.
From what I understood, less was more now, like more with the older one. But I still didn't really kind of.
So if we did, you know, man locate. So we're going to come in here and we can look down through this till we find that. So we can locate all base names, counts, databases, existing, follows, helps, ignore case, ignore spaces. I'm not sure what transliteral is, but limit, mmap, no follow, null, statistics, quiet, version also, hold in. And I'm looking forward to see if they have add-ons. They don't.
What's the difference between an add-on and the dash, what are those called, the options?
You know, it's a good question. I'm gonna go have to look it up because I know.
No worries, it doesn't really matter.
I think more is just used as an overall, and you need that vertical line to differentiate it from the commands to which it's applying. So you could just as easily, you know, oops, you know, unfortunately, list dash L still doesn't go past one page. Let's see, list, recursive, and L, still not. Come on, you can do it. What are hidden files? I forget.
The dot,
Question mark.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how to use it with the ls command.
I think that works with the LS command.
There we go. So if I do this and now do a space and do that and do more, now it basically adds on a feature in the terminal window that allows me to look at one page at a time. So that, I mean, you can still access the information using the scroll bar.
what was that command again? LS dash.
So I did the ls-r, the R stands for recursive. It's going to show me everything in those file folders. I wanted a long list. L means to put it into a long format, which gives me all that information. If I didn't have the L, then I wouldn't get anything but the file names and the folder names.
Yes, which is what.
And the A is all inclusive, but I can't remember exactly. So if we did the exact same one, but without the L, and we're going to get just the names. So that's what the, and if we put the L back, but took the A out, then what did we lose? We left all, oh, we didn't get any of the hidden folders. So, in any of the hidden files. So, you know, it's a combination of all the different things. I don't use it enough, so I always have to go look the stuff up myself, but all of that's available. This, again, is the stuff that you would see when you're using a file manager in a graphical user environment. Okay, go back. So the locate, the find is similar. Now the cool thing about find, sorry.
So we were relating this to what you were saying in the graphical user environment, this would be like search.
Yeah, it could be search.
Is that one of the things, like where you go to that thing on the side where you can't quite remember what, and you just put it in and start looking, like that thing?
Right, well, in Linux, this is where all of those commands tie back to.
Well, right, so but if you were asking that question from before,
Yes.
where does it exist in the real world?
Right.
That would be one of the answers.
Right,
And I'm sure there's more than one answer in some of this stuff.
you know, search features on your phone to find a file. Search features
Right.
in Linux. Linux obviously uses these commands. I would take the same answer for Windows. Hey, I'm in File Manager on a Windows machine, which looks very similar. And I can change it. You know, do I want to show it as an icon like this, or do I want to go in here and show all the details? Taking my glasses off. Permissions and limits. Well, I wanted to do. There we go. So, you know, I don't think we need it that way over there. So it doesn't even give us all of the information we want. I don't use the Linux operating system enough.
You know the file system?
Over here.
No, on the left, under downloads. Keep going down, no, back where you are. No, over there, go down. One more, there.
Look at the contents of the
Like that. See, that gives you like all of your stickers and then.
Right. Well, if you've, just gonna go to a Windows machine for a second, share the screen. Well, I can put it up on the. If I was in a Windows machine and I open up File Manager, I have all those same choices. You know, I can do downloads, and I can view by icons. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, it's not up there. Oh, that's good. So now it should be back. Now I should be able to share this. No. Okay, so if I'm in this, can you show up?
On one of the screens, on that screen.
Oh, no. Why is someone named Noel?
Who's that?
Oh, yeah, good.
Who's that?
So anyway, just bear with me for a second. In Windows, I can set this for icons, in which case what it's doing is, depending on the file type, it is associating a particular icon for that file type, which is why, if it's a, whatever this was, that was here's some text documents. Word documents would show up somewhat, but I'm going to make a slightly smaller. I'm going to go to medium icons. And here, the text underneath is the file name. The box itself is whatever the operating system is associated with that file type. And when you install a program, in Windows, there is a table that links file type to icon type. And so when you install some new program, widgets.com, gives you a little app to run. And one of the things they can do is provide an icon for their file types, because maybe they have a special file type. And that way, Windows will now show that icon when, that's done. If it doesn't, it's going to give you a generic file icon that says we don't know what it is. But because Windows has gotten so big and there really aren't that many new file extensions, they kind of know what everything is now. They know what a PDF is. They know what a .x is. They know what, all the different files are. So I can also go in here and do view and go to a list. And this is just file and folder names. Windows tends to call them folders. Linux calls them what? Directories. Same thing. I can also go in here and view details, which gives me more information. I can also go into properties for this folder. It'll let me. And I'm going to show hidden files. Yeah, because I haven't shared that, but it'll. All right, what did it do? Just took them all away. Well, that's a good question. I don't know where it went. I will have to let you. You can have Windows show you hidden folders, which is the equivalent of the / command in Linux. You can see who owns it. You can go up here and type on the top bar here and show date created. You can show authors if it has it. You can go up and show tags and title. You can go up, go to the more column. So there's all of these things that you can select to view. This is coming directly out of the list and the list attributes that are available. Although the command is slightly different in the Windows environment, it's the same damn thing. Let me stop sharing this. There it is. So glad they had nice wheels. Reshare. See if it'll hook back up again. And there it goes. With all the speed of nothing. A couple of the cool things that you can do with the find command, which I'll show you, is you can use a lot of different attributes. Go down to the next slide. You can do look for things that have been changed, either accessed or modified in the last so many minutes, last so many days. So I can say, show me a list, or find me all the files that were modified in the last 10 minutes, or in the last 5 days. I could say, find me empty files or directories. So in other words, it's time to clean up. Show me files that have nothing in them. Because I can create files that have nothing in them. That all they are is a name, but nothing to go inside them. I can find things by file name, of course. I can also find them by size and by type. And I can string different things together. I can also say find user. Go back over to find Bob Barker. So I have to say user, sorry. Offered. Oh, sorry. No, I gotta spell it usually, that's my error. So find user tpick. And those are all the things that just went by. Probably need to do the more command. So here are all the places on this computer that belong to me. Kind of cool. This one's doing it line by line instead of page by page. Not sure why. If I want to get out of it, I just hit the Q and it drops me out. Okay. I can also do find. I want to find size. So let's find things that are big. Find size plus, I don't know, 8000. Quickly, I forget. Trying to remember if you actually have to put kilobits or not. Good job. K, just a K. So those are the only things on this file. There's a Flash player that was downloaded. There's a log. I'm surprised there's a log on here that's bigger than 8 megabytes, but I don't think I'll use cat to go look at it. And the Zoom download was also bigger than 8 gigabytes, megabytes. So, you know, those are some things you can do with find. Page down. So path is not a command, but it's a variable that Linux keeps updating. And it's used by other places. It's not something that you are going to be modifying, but it's important to understand what it is. So your computer has a set of directories that it will look in before, you know, when you put in a command. So when you type in ls space, you know, slash or dash a or whatever your format is that you want, how does it know what ls is? It goes and looks in anything that's in the path file, which basically is a list of directories. It's usually the bin directories, the ones that have the binary executable files in it, because ls is an executable file, which when you say ls and then something beyond it, boom, it pops up and you run that command. But if that ls is not in one of those folders, then it will not run. Does that make sense? And the only reason why we said that was because when we get to the which command, which you can only use on Halloween, just a kid. So you use the which command to actually search for an executable file. You don't use this to find a text file or anything else. And so if we go back over and do a, oops, yellow. We did the which grep. Back over here. So we do which grep. It's going to be found in the bin file, bin/grep. So we can actually go change directory, list, change directory to bin, list, And guess what? Rep is right there. So we can use which to find that. Now you could find it using the find. But it doesn't tell you where it is. Although you can do find dash.
It just tells you that it's there.
Oops. I'm forgetting that. But yeah. And if we said, find, well, actually, find ls. So when we use the find, it says no such file or directory. We do which ls, we get that it's in the bin called ls, and then it's a file called ls in the bin file. Which, and it's in user bin which. So all of that. All of those are, when you're searching with which, it's only going to find bin files that are in that folder. So if we were to do, where am I? Yeah, change directory. So if you'll look up on there, you'll see that I moved ls into here. I made a copy of it. I did not delete the original one. If I do a which ls, it can only find the one that is in the path directories. It doesn't find the other one. So just realize that there are times when that you're not going to find it using that, but it's only looking for executables, not files that contain ls. As you can imagine, the list would be a long list. Talking about the sorting of files, there's a bunch of information that all goes together with file management in Linux. And the three big things that make it up, you've got a super block, which contains all the information. And that's basically the number of the file system, how many inodes, how many data blocks, how much data each block holds in kilobytes. All of that's kept in what they call the super block. Anybody, well, an inode, it's not inode, but inode, those are informational nodes. Every single file and directory, for the most part, has its own inode. It's like a file number. So even though we might call it Tom's test txt, the computer thinks of it by its file or inode number. It's a computer. Computers don't read English, so it has a number. Each inode is unique for a particular file or directory, except when we talk about linked files, which we'll talk about in a minute. The inode contains the file size, the file location, the last date it's been modified, who has permission to access it, who owns the file, and when the file is deleted, the inode is deleted. How many of you have read about security issues with hard drives? Anybody? If you were you had a hard drive you wanted to get rid of and sell it on eBay, and you went on and deleted all the files and sold it, have you deleted all your information? You've deleted, in the Windows world probably, the inode information. not the file itself. You deleted where it was in, and in the Windows, it's called a file allocation table. And so that file allocation table tells you what's the file name, where's it located, where are the segments located, how large is it, what type of file is it, who owns it, and what are the permissions. When you delete that in a Windows system on a Windows hard drive, all you did was delete the table, or delete that one entry in that table.
Almost similar to like from TED 2.
Like what?
From TED 2. When they had to try to get rid of the laptop.
Oh, TED 2? Yeah,
Oh,
was it a movie?
a movie. It was a really hilarious scene.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, did you check?
are you thinking I'm low? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'll check.
You started educating a little.
I have a question.
I'm fine. Yeah, thank you.
The calculating the numbers and the letters, XR, W thing, is that going to be on the final? Because I have a hard time with that.
Oh, we are going to talk about that in just a minute.
Ooh, thanks.
So, whether or not we're talking about the super block in Linux, or the FAT, the file allocation table, in Windows, what this is here's your hard drive. And this is a graphical representation. This is not accurate. Here's your FAT that tells the operating system where all the files are. Over here, and maybe even spread out over a couple of different sectors on a hard drive, is a file called, Tom's resume. .docx, because I get tired of teaching, And, okay, I want to delete it. All I do is I go, boop, and it's gone. It's disappeared. None of this gets changed. However, that space does now become available for other writing. So if your hard disk is at 95% capacity, besides the fact that you're sitting there and it's going really, really slow, chances are as soon as you open up space, it won't be long before it gets overwritten. Once it's overwritten, the data is gone. But if I went in here and said, I've got all of these files in here, the file allocation table tells me where this one ends and the next segment starts, because it's not all put together. Your hard drives are not treated like pages in a book where every page follows the next page. They are numbered and then scattered all over the hard drive. And so you really need to know that it is, you really end up with Tom's resume, and it's, part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it's a small file, it might all be together. If it's a large file and there's not a lot of congruent space altogether, then the operating system is just going to distribute it all over the hard disk. Actually, it's not done by the operating system. It's done by the controller for the hard drive. And the file allocation table keeps track of both the name, the size, and where all of the parts are. And that way, when you call that file up again, the operating system asks the hard drive, hey, give me Tom's resume. The hard drive board, because there's a circuit board in there, says, oh, okay, look in the file allocation table. There's Tom's resume. Let's start pulling those pieces off the hard drive. And it pulls them off and then passes the entire file back to the operating system. If it's a big file, nowadays they can stream it literally off the hard drive, because it may take longer than waiting for the entire file to be brought together. Not to mention that if you've got a terabyte hard drive, you may not have, and you've got these 20 gigabyte video files on there. That's bigger than any of the chips on the control board for the hard drive. So you kind of have to be able to shuttle it towards the operating system rather than doing it, collecting it all and sending it. So when you delete it, all you delete is the part out of the file allocation table or out of the parts in the super block, which are the inodes. But all the data stays over here. What a forensic hard drive data specialist does is if somebody has erased all of this, the VAT table or the inodes, they will go back in and they will look at all of the writing that's on here, and they will start to piece it together and try to make sense out of it. It's a little bit like if I walked up to one of you and said, this is what was in the shredder, boom, could you please try to make the letters back out of it? Now the nice thing is that some of those pieces, and I won't go with the longs, not the cross shred, where it's little tiny pieces of confetti, but we'll even have these strings because it's more like a string that you find in there. And depending on what type of file it is, it will have different colored paper because that's going to make it a little easier. Oh, all of the Word documents look like this because they're formatted a particular way. All of the Excel sheets look like this. Oh, all of the downloads, from the cache, from your browser history, those look like that. So you can start making it a little bit better. They have software that does a lot of it for you. Then you have to start making some intuition and some looking at the pieces that you found and try to piece it together. And because these pieces that are stored here, if you were to break up a Word document, a small Word document might be in one segment. A big one might be in 5. It's not like it's going to be in 300 different segments that you have to piece together. So if one segment said, so if you could let Aunt, and then you found another segment that said, Betty, know if she can make it to Christmas. There's some inference you can do there that said those two go together because none of the other segments you found matched between an aunt and a name like Betty, that made sense. Because obviously, and if you could let Aunt Ferdinand that the interest rate on the mortgage is such and such, it doesn't make any sense. So there's a certain amount of inference that you can put into that. So anyway, keep in mind, deletion of a file, all it does is take the inodes out of here and the entries in the fact table out of here. It does not delete any of the data. So
do they create another table that they use to access it? Or just they take
they would basically they'd be using a piece of forensic software that would work on that. And so they would go through this hard drive literally serially, find each and every segment, and each segment ends with an end of, which is never deleted. It's just that you don't have to start of. And so if you're going along, and you've got data, stop, data, stop, data, stop, you can make, you can start piecing it apart into segments. If you were to have your hard drive cleansed, and all you got to do is go online and say, I need software to cleanse my hard drive. Think of it as an enema for your hard drive.
No.
And what you do is the software literally goes through and it writes, 0000001111111 over the entire file, the entire disk. So nothing is left at all, period. Nothing but ones and zeros that make no sense whatsoever. So now when you sell it on eBay and they go and they get it, even if they have the forensic material, they're not going to be able to pull that out of there. Yes?
Does formatting work?
It depends on the level of formatting. If you probably noticed, you want quick format or high level format. quick format rewrites the fat table.
Oh,
Well, and it's a good question. One of you should look that up and bring the answer on Thursday. If you do a full format, I'm pretty sure you're wiping off everything on there, but you have to understand from the Windows perspective, when it says, if you do this, you're going to lose everything. You may not be losing everything. All they have to do is delete this, then you've lost everything. From a normal Windows perspective, or from Linux's perspective. If you want to, from a forensics viewpoint, erase everything. You must overwrite everything with ones and zeros in a random format, or write everything to a 1, go back, write everything to a 0, do it a couple of times, if you want to be, really sure. Because from what I understand, they have, if you go down to NSA, if you just clean it once, they have the ability to look at a bit to see if it has a shadow of a history on it. But I think you're talking about, the nth degree of, unless you really cross the NSA, you'd probably fine. But yes.
Does this concept work the same with solid state drives, or is it different?
The concept is the same. They both use allocation tables. They call them different things. Solid state drives, obviously, it's addressed memory. And on a plattered disk, like a hard drive, you have what they call sectors. And the reason they have sectors is kind of funny, because if you think about it, here's your platter inside of a hard disk, and you have an arm that reaches over. You got the center spindle. And this thing is broken up into sectors. And as it's spinning around, I forget right, left, and it treats each sector differently, and each sector has so many blocks in it. And Windows, I don't know what they do now. It used to be they wouldn't start a new write in the middle of a sector, so at some point you start losing efficiency. The solid state drives are just a little cleaner about that, because every single bit's got its own address. The interesting thing too is, if you think about it, this sector right here has the same amount of information as this sector out here, but it's much more condensed here, because it has to do it based on the time of transit, not on the length of distance across the surface of the hard drive. You could probably write other algorithms that would allow you to make a more compact writing on the outer edge, where you got a lot more space than on the inner edge where it's this big, but they don't. So you're kind of limited on how you write data on there. And it doesn't go really right to the center. There's a whole center section that's not used, probably because it'd be impossible to write that small electronically. Question?
the one disk or several?
It's usually several, although, you get into those little miniature 2.5-inch drives that they put into a floppy, a laptop, probably just a single. But it means what they have to do is they have to go to a higher quality that can write more densely. Because if you still want, or you may have also noticed a lot of the time, it's not as bad anymore. They've gone almost entirely to solid state drives for the laptops. When it was actual plattered disks in a hard drive in a laptop, you usually got a smaller hard drive on a laptop. Because, yeah, you could buy a terabyte to go in your desktop and a 3.5-inch, 1-inch thick, multi-layered plattered hard drive, but you couldn't do that in a laptop. So you were going to get a 250 gigabit hard drive. Why? Because you could put that on a single platter, put it inside there, shrink it down to 2.5 inches, and stick it in the side of your machine. So there's just physical limitations on what you could do.
That's a hybrid. Mine is a hybrid, it's an SSD.
Right. Well, and what that does is all hard drives have been hybrids for a long time. On this hard drive box that you have here, whatever kind, there's a memory chip. And when you ask for a file, you've got to collect it from wherever it's stored. And like I said, it could be stored in a bunch of different places. The processor on this hard drive and the memory chip have to store it into a segment that it can pass intelligently to the operating system. What a hybrid does is it's got a bigger memory chip. And what it does is now it doesn't just wait for you to ask for something. It can use assumptive behaviors to think about what you're likely to ask for and already load it into this much faster memory. So if you ask for, if you ask for Tom's resume, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, I think by the time you get to part 2, it can say, I think Tom's going to ask for part 3 next, and load that, or maybe load everything that was associated with a particular folder, and then upload it all at the same time. Does that make sense? Other storage questions? I know we got a little bit off into the roughage. We sliced it into the woods on that one, but it's good. We found 3 extra balls sitting out there. Sorry, golf and reference. Anyway, so we've got the super block. We have the inodes, and then we have the data block. And the data block itself is the file. It is, it's what you're looking for. But you can only find it by knowing what the inode is. And you need to look at the super block to look at the inode. The inode gives you the file, and so it's kind of a cascade. It's very similar to what we do with Windows. Linked files. I'm going to make this bigger just so it's a little easier to see. Come on. How many seconds will it take? It's like it's loading on my own too. Oh, come on.
Right.
Unable to load file.
Rest in peace.
Well, it's back on now. There we go. Okay, so you've all seen that light box that's down at the bottom. That shows you the different information about a particular file. We're going to talk about it in a little bit. The information that they're showing you there pretty much is as follows. Let's just take that first file where it says 37594, 595. That's its inode number. And then you see a D next to it, Devin and Billy. You see the next number, which is a D. That represents that it's a directory. If you look over on the side, you'll see it's the desktop directory. So no surprises there. And we'll talk about it in a second, but the first 3 letters, that RWX, what do you suppose the RW stand for?
Read, write, execute.
Right, read, write, and execute. The first 3 letters are for the user. So the user, and this user happens to be the root user, can read, write, and execute anything in that directory. The second 3, which are blank on this one, would be group permissions. So these letters all represent the permissions of the directories or the files.
That would be 700.
700?
Yeah, because one of them is 4, one of them is 3, and then one is 1. And then,
I've lost you. Referencing to what?
no, like, that's just what, like, the trauma.
CH1.
CH1, yeah. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. And so, yeah, let me go to court. So this is important and you should get used to this and know it. As well as you know your kids' names. You have kids.
I forgot my kids.
If not, maybe your parents' names. So there's 10 things in that long list. The first one is either empty or a D. Or it could be something else if it's a recognized file type, but it's usually just going to be blank unless it's a directory, in which case that's that. The next three are the permissions for the user. The three after that are the permissions for the group. And the three after that are the permissions for other. I've never used other, so we hear from me. I think that has to do with, do you want to give some permissions to anybody? Don't even have to be part of the group. Probably something you would use if you were writing files that were going to be part of your web server, where everybody has access to them, or at least everybody, because you don't want to serve it out to everybody, aren't you? So if we look at that first one, the desktop directory, then we get the D, and we get the read, the write, and the execute, but then everything else is that, which means other users in your group cannot change your directory. People on the internet cannot change your directory. Can't even look at it. Who could look at it? Root could. Well, actually, in this case, root could for two reasons. One is because root is the owner and root is the group. So that next thing that you see is owner. And then is it the next thing? Yeah, the next thing. Well, there's a number there too, hold on. And then you've got the group. And then you get into file size and the date and the file name. So in the case of this one, it says root, and then the information. This number right in here has to do with the, I'm going to have to go look, I forget that number. That number is the number of links. So there is, if you looked at file 3 stands all by itself. There is only one instance. The link is to itself. But if you go up to file 2 and file 1, if you look over here, you'll notice that the inode number is the exact same. Those are linked files, and they were created using the linked command. And by doing that, they basically created a new copy for one of those files. It's an absolute copy of the other one. The only difference is I can delete one and the other one remains, which is different. So this is a hard link. There's really nothing you're going to be doing hard linking for, so don't worry about it, but it's something I wanted to share with you. If we go down one more, it'd be nice. They have what they call symbolic links. You'll notice here, file 1 and file 2. Well, there we go. There it goes. I was going to say, but that's the same thing. In here, that last one, file 4, is a symbolic link to file 3. So they created a link. I'm surprised they didn't. They left off the inode number, and you would have seen that the inode numbers were different. So a symbolic link, different inode number. They treat them as different files, but they are linked symbolically, and that link shows up right there on the edge. And if you delete the original file, then your symbolically linked file will show up as an error if you try to access it. So it doesn't make a copy of it, it makes a link to it. If that makes any difference. Permissions. Chown. I think we can chown down now. Change owner, chown. And some of the commands that you can use, you can always type in who am I? And that's gonna, for me, that would either show up as root or T. Pickford. Although in this case, I'm gonna regret, I need to just go in and delete T. Pickford, Pickford, you know, because it drives me nuts. So if I go into who am I, it'll tell me that. I can also go in and say group, and it will tell me what group I belong to. And in this case, it should show me in the root group. I can do just totally unrelated touch file 1, and that'll create a new empty file. And remember, we can always find empty files later if we want to get rid of them. And now I can, so let's go do that. We're gonna make a file, and then we'll look and see who owns it. Clear. So we're going to Davis. It's clear. How fast can I forget things? Apparently, it's very fast.
I had to get a second monitor because of you.
Oh, I know. This is much easier for me when I'm on 2 monitors and not a laptop.
Because I kept tabbing out and back in and forgetting exactly what the command was. So, yeah, now I'm a genius.
So I'm just gonna create a file. I'm gonna call it touch file or file 123 text. So now if I do list, there it is. But now what I can do is I can do the user.
So when I try to do that, it tells me permission is denied. Which is what I kept running into when I was trying to do something.
Okay.
Sudo?
Yeah, so you may need to
If I use the sudo, I can do it then.
just try to remember what the password on this thing is. Authentication failure.
Right, so I don't know what the password would be on like this one. So,
Well, hopefully when you set it up,
well, it's just the mid stick.
oh, yeah.
So I don't know how that works. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and yeah, so I am logged in. So I can look up, I looked up who am I, I'm T. Pickford. I looked up groups and it showed me that my groups include myself, admin, CD-ROM, sudo, dip, plug dev, LP admin, and Samba share. So those are all the groups that Linux formed when I installed it, except for T. Pickford, which got made later. And because I'm a root user, it gave me that. I wish I could remember what the root password I set up for this is, because then I should be able to do sudo, and that would let me change, or su root, change to the root directory. but it's going to ask me for the password for that. I'm already in the root directory. I have all the permissions, which is probably why it let me do things like create, touch, make a file. All right. Now, what were we trying to do there?
We're creating a file to do something with it.
Yep. So, I didn't think so. Tells you how. What am I missing?
Oh, the dot, because you probably, because it has a dot in it, maybe it made it.
Well, I think someone at the end of that was.
See, there it is.
Yep. You see it's empty. So the owner, myself, I can read and write it. I can't execute it. The group can read it, and anybody else can read it. So I can go back over to my slideshow. Sometimes this thing, the mouse disappears. There it is. So I can rename the owner for that command just by doing a chown and giving it a new owner and the file name. So I can do chown group file 1, 2, 3. Actually, not permitted.
I'm glad to see you're getting these.
All right, well, so what do? We do man, chown, no.
Readings the number 4. So if you're looking at the RW, X, RWX.
I'm not sure why it wouldn't work, but so chown group was right. All right. Well, let me go. I'll have to go play with that a little bit. It was working last time I checked.
See, that's what I kept telling you when I kept trying to get it to accept the email back that I delivered tomorrow, and then moving to the permissions, and it just kept saying
Yeah, give me a second. I've only got like 2 more slides. Let me cover these, and then you're going to spend some time logging into your computer, or I've got thumb drives so you can boot to Linux off these machines, and you can practice some of these commands.
Don't change that one yet.
Which one?
That one. I'm taking screenshots of all these slides.
No,
Okay, you're good.
I could probably share that.
Oh, okay. Well, instead of just, that's smart.
I'd have to change
Good
it to a
idea,
PowerPoint.
smart man.
So just like the chown, which is change owner, you can also change group with group. Yeah, I don't think it's got a way to say it, but
Change group.
yeah, change group.
Yeah.
And again, where are you changing it to, and what's the file name? You can do it for both a file or a directory. You can also do it as part of chown, change owner. So you can do a change owner, change group at the same time. You can't do a change owner, change group in the change group command, but in the change owner command, you can change both. And you do that by saying chown the user.root that you want to change, because root in that case is the group. So user one in the group root, you're going to change that user and group for that file to that user and group. We talked about this already. Read, write, execute. Hard to get an X into read or write, but in the change mod, you can apply it to users, groups, and others. You can add a permission, remove a permission, or make a permission equal to. Remember, if you take away permissions, the worst case scenario is that it still belongs to root. So there's nothing you can do to take it away from being available to the root user. So if somehow Noah here logs into his files, thinks he's giving permissions for some of his files to somebody else, and deletes all your own permissions, then you'd go to the root person and say, can I have it back? And they'd have to go find the files and say, well, yeah, we know you gave it to. Yeah. There's that too.
So you would use something like this if you were managing a network and you had a person that was on one project and then was changing to a different one and now needing access to that. Would this be a quick way to do that, or is that kind of the concept?
That's the concept. It's also what you do if you have a user who's left.
Obviously, right.
And so you can cancel their access. Well, who are you going to change all their files to?
Right.
Because Bob's been working for the company for 18 years, knows everything about everything, and yet you don't want Bob to have access. He doesn't work here anymore. So you cancel his access to the computers in general, but now you've got to reassign his files in an orderly manner to somebody else.
Give it to the new.
Yeah, give it to the new person. Oh, by the way, here's Bob's files. Well, but it's a stack of hard drives. Yeah, he's been here a while. Good luck. Hey, it's happened. I know some of you look like you're packing up to leave, but wouldn't this be a good time to go play with some of those?
Sure.
I mean, like here. Like get your computer to go for it. Or have you been doing it as we went along?
I want to try to figure out how to actually make this go.
I should also ask, so Kevin, since we know you got it right, what did you do to get the email to work?
First, I had to install it, which I used since I'm using a virtual machine for it. I did sudo space yum space install space ssmtp. Asked me if I wanted to install it. I said yes.
Sorry, sudo yum what?
ssmtp.
Install.
Install, right? Install. All right, and once that was done?
I went into the files, clicked on other location, found the SSMTP file, and clicked on the SSMTP config.
Now, was that a separate file or?
So it was in the main file aspect.
Okay, so when you open this, which is,
Well, it went other locations, etc, SSMTP,
Yep.
and inside that folder, it was the SSMTP config. It was actually how you put it down to like type in the terminal, because I didn't want to deal with the terminal. It's awful.
oh, sure. So you went into the config file, and then you had to configure it based on the way it was.
root equals your email.
Yep.
And I went down to the first mail hub, where I changed it to smtp.gmail.com.
Okay.
And I went down to the other mail hub, but it's gmail.com.
Yep.
Plus the core in 587.
Yeah.
Then was the host name.
Yep.
I typed in terminal host name to find my host name.
Yep.
Exactly what it was. Under user TTLS, users star TLS. Now let me go back one. I can't remember everything off the top of my head.
Anybody know what the colon with a number beyond it means?
It's the
Hold on.
port emails are sent.
Right. So in the internet, when a computer accesses the internet, it has to open what they call a port. And the reason for this is, think about it. A bunch of data comes out of your computer to go onto the internet. And it comes back. If you're browsing the web, sending emails, streaming video, you're on Discord chatting with your friends in Idaho, you're doing all of this, your computer is connecting to the time server to get the latest time. You've got a map open that's showing the weather. All of this stuff is all happening. How does it know where to go when it comes back to your computer? Part of that is because it's your IP address or your protocol like SSMTP and a port number. And that port number is it's part of your address, pretty much. And a computer security system will open and close ports only when they're supposed to be open or closed. You don't want to leave ports open because that's where a lot of the security violations over the last 20 years have come from. Well, we're just going to leave open the FTP port in case anybody needs to access the files. Yeah, maybe not a good idea. Anyway, so finish up.
I had to make sure both TLS and TS were on yes, or equal yes.
Yep.
I did enter the county space username / password. Auth user equals your Gmail.
Yep.
Enter auth password, your Gmail's password. Equal between it, sorry.
Yep.
Then space again, underneath that line, auth, method equals in all caps login. And then I tested it with myself twice. And sent one to my tutor, so he got always helping me out, tips and stuff. Then I sent you one.
Yep.
Came back with an error message. So I might have sent you a second one.
I got one of them.
But then when I went to actually send the email, I did SSMTP space the recipient's email. Enter. That's when I start filling out the lines. 2 : space their email again.
Yep.
Enter. From : my email. Enter again the subject : right in the subject and be entered twice. Your message. Enter again. Control D.
Piece of cake, right?
Yes.
So, sorry.
If it's on a live boot, it's slightly different.
Yeah.
It's through the DNF. Yeah.
Yeah, I ran into that, but I can get that one. That one seemed to work better.
So some of the problems you get, like I said, with a live boot is that the whole file structure is different. I mean, it's still a file structure, but it doesn't, where it wants to be writing it is on your hard drive or on your solid state drive or whatever. And what you've got is a thumb drive, which depending on how your computer is treating the thumb drive, whether it's truly treating it as a hard drive or a USB thumb drive, sometimes the limitations show up, sometimes they don't. And I have to be honest, I don't know the difference. But, so you went with DNF. That worked?
Yeah.
For a live boot?
Yahoo, that doesn't work.
Okay.
It's CV to DNF.
Yep.
DNF?
But you got Yum to work on your,
Yeah, virtual machine works best.
okay.
I tried DNF with at first, it didn't work. Then I used Yum. We're fine.
Now, did you find that information on the web?
No, actually, Isaiah mentioned about how to install Chrome, and then in my mind, I was like, what if I tried to install the SSFP and I typed it in, it works.
Yeah.
So I took a gamble and it worked.
Yeah, cool. All right. So that was, I mean, it was a challenging thing, but this is what, the biggest part about this was you taking a challenge, trying to get something as simple as sending a short email on a new system that you're not familiar with new protocols, and installing something, through the terminal, although I get you opened up the file without going through the terminal to edit it. That makes total sense.
It's getting, I
Yeah,
was
well,
getting tired, it was like midnight.
yeah.
I'm not doing this anymore.
I hate this.
They actually heard me say that.
Yeah.
You just kept messaging me.
It's been long.
Did I?
With this president.
Oh, I never did. Hold on. Don't anybody else leave. I want to get a. We'll have to see if we can reconstruct our attendance today, because I know some people are. We'll give them a 0.
You're too nice. I would have been yelling.
Well, yeah. Okay, so today is February what? 12th?
Well,
Wayne Austin, not here. Devin is here. Amanda Diaz,
Yeah.
not here.
No, come on, I'm here.
Gage? Gage, not here. Thought Gage was here. Which one? Aaron. Did Aaron leave, or was Aaron absent? Weston's here. JT is here. Matthew is here.
yeah.
Noah? Noah, are you here? Noah's not here. Or maybe he is. Maybe. Isaiah? Zarby. Zarby was online, right?
No, he was here, he left.
Oh, yep. Brian was not. I didn't see him online. Kelvin was here.
Yeah, he was here.
Billy was here. Chris. Chris. And Franklin. Who else was online?
Is it right here? Is it John C?
Guess I'll-
All right, not really. Okay, so the only question was Gage and Aaron. Anybody remember? Nope. You?
I forget the guy that was here, I forgot his name.
That was Kelvin.
Yeah, we already got him.
All right. So, I do not have new homework for you, but you've got labs to be working on. I don't think anybody has finished all the labs up through 5. I have not.
I did,
Oh, cool.
I think.
What was that?
There are a few of you that have taken all of your quizzes all the way through.
I'm on 6.
Huh?
I'm on 6. I'm tired of looking.
Okay.
I don't understand a lot, and it makes me really sad.
Yep. And I've been a little reluctant to go through and grade them, but I'll start doing that, because if only 4 out of 15 or 16 of you have done it, then it's hard for me to grade them and go back, and I really want you to do it, so.
Like module 4, I didn't answer 3 of the questions out of 8, because I just,
Did today help at all, you think?
I'll go back. Can you send those though?
Yeah, I'll, before I leave, I'll go do that now, and I'll upload that. It'll be on the My EMCC is one of the handouts. I'm just gonna have to turn it into either a PDF or a PowerPoint.
Thank you.
All right, enjoy tomorrow. It's probably gonna be a snow day, but you'll have to check with EMCC.
No, too late. Tom said it's a snow day.
Rave alert.
When all my kids got flowers down.
Yes,
Tom
thank
said-
you. I'm having trouble with my thing.